What up, Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. As you know, on this show, we love talking about crowdfunding, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, how do you raise funds for a new product? How do you get funding for a dream? How do you actually execute on something that's in your head and really turn that into a physical reality, right? And today's story, I think, is really inspiring, but it's also very, I think, tactically interesting. So, for example, for those of you out there that are kind of wondering, what if I do my first campaign and it doesn't go super well? What happens if I don't even introduce this to my friends and family? Can I still be successful? Is this something that's in the realm of possibility? What if I'm not even a creator? I've never created a product before in my life. Well, this episode, I think, is going to shed a lot of light on that, because today's creator actually did their first campaign and, obviously it was great. They were testing out the waters. They're trying it out. Really good, I think, to take action either way. They did their first campaign and it only raised around like $4,000 for their first Kickstarter campaign. A lot of people could be like, that's not success. But instead, they actually went back to the drawing board and they were like, you know what? I learned a lot and now I actually want to do this for real. So they buckled down, they focused super hard on making a whole new product. They got this out there, and then guess what? With their second Kickstarter campaign, and this obviously a tremendous success, they were able to attract more than 5,000 backers and raise over $428,000. And you're going to hear from this man directly on the podcast, how they were also saying, even just before going live, that they were so apprehensive, that they were afraid of being embarrassed, that no one was going to buy this, no one's going to like it, no one's going to support it. And lo and behold, they ended up having 5,000 plus people actually attracted to this project and raised more than $420,000. They said a lot of interesting things about what you need to do in order to see success on Kickstarter. What are the things that you need to focus on? And they actually, and I'll be honest with you, a lot of people out there give advice, obviously myself included, and they steered clear with some of that advice and really stuck with their gut with a lot of different things, which is one of the things I also talk about. And I think that really paid out for them as well. So you're gonna hear about that, and hear about some of the things they recommend you do when it comes to your Kickstarter project, some of the ways in which you can stand out. What if you don't even have reviews for your product? How do you still pull off a six-figure raise when you don't have reviews for your product? A lot of great stuff you're going to discover and learn about on today's podcast episode, as well as the story of this person who's actually, I think, in kind of a nice heartfelt way, making products and has a whole company based around their kids. So really interesting. I think you're going to learn a lot from this. And also for a first-time creator, it's really freaking inspiring. In addition, if you do enjoy my show, go check out some of my other episodes out there on iTunes. I love iTunes just because you can very easily be listening to podcasts on your way to work. If you're doing other stuff, you're upgrading your body at the gym. You're also cleaning you're cleaning your house or something like that. Whatever you're doing, man, you could be listening to the podcast at the same time. You could be here in Miami. You could be paddleboarding out there in the water. You could still be listening to my podcast. So if you're driving, you're doing whatever, you're doing on a commute, great time to really invest in your education in that way. And really, training is so incredibly important. I think that's really underutilized. And I think a lot of the times when you're trying to do something new, the more that you can train, almost like an Olympic athlete, if you're showing up every single day, you're working hard, you're training, you're really putting yourself in the position to be successful. And that's something that's worked so well in my own life, but it's also something that I think in general is something we always got to be training. Sometimes you just have access to the wrong data, right? And the mind is literally the most precious asset. You got to be a lifelong learner. You really have to treasure learning. So I think that if you're having trouble with this process, or you feel like you want to just speed it up a tiny bit, if you want this to go faster for you, I got a great resource for you, which is the Kickstarter launch formula. This is available on Audible, so you can listen to this on the way to work. You can listen to this while you're commuting to work. You can listen to this when you're doing other stuff, right? Doesn't matter. You can be downloading this information in your head, almost like you're a sponge, and you're just absorbing all of this very quickly into your mind. So you know exactly what you got to do. You got access to the right information, and you're developing those skills, which are going to help you have a powerful launch, right, when it comes to doing your campaign. So this is a step-by-step process which you can master. And when you master the game of crowdfunding, you can go back to the crowd and you can raise money time and time and time again. And you've heard it on this show. So go and check out this link to download a copy of the Kickstarter launch formula. That link is crowdcrux.com, crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. That link is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio, crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. That will take you there. And also you can get a free copy for it if you sign up for a free 30-day trial of Audible. Awesome, man. Let's get straight into this interview and discover how this creator, how this individual was able to attract more than $428,000 with their Kickstarter campaign, discover a whole new career path, and get 5,000 people plus around the world to actually discover something that they've made for their first time. It's coming up right after this. If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured, I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist. Fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Today we have a multi-six-figure campaigner on the show, having already attracted more than 5,000 backers with their project, over 400,000 that has been pledged, and also a really interesting story here. So Joshua, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Definitely, man. Let's get started. For those who are listening and they don't have this in front of them, can you just describe a bit about your project and what you're trying to do here?
Our product is called League of the Lexicon. It is a game about words and language. It's a quiz game. It's got 2,000 questions in 5 categories that explore every aspect of language, from what words mean, to how we use them, to etymology, to wordy trivia. It is a game for language lovers. And I think that part of how it arose was my perspective that language is a massive thing. People are fascinated by language. People are fascinated by words and language. But games about words, most of them are word building games like Scrabble or Bananagrams, and you get a few things like Scattergrees. But by and large, there isn't much out there for word lovers. And to make something that would be the ultimate game for people who love words. And that really was the ambition behind the project.
Cool, man. Where did the actual inspiration come from for this?
I'm not trying to be trite or overly sentimental about this, but the name of our company is Two Brothers Games. And the two brothers are my two boys who are aged 8 and 11. And honestly, they were the inspiration for this game. And this was very much something that was born out of the lockdown experience. We were doing a lot of homeschooling. And I think I was just frustrated with how English was being taught to them. I'm not a linguist, but I love words. They're so fascinating. But as a student, as a 8-year-old or an 11-year-old student, what you're taught can be so boring. And I think that the genesis of this was actually, this is such a rich, wonderful, surprising subject. And I kind of wanted to inspire them with everything that words and language could be about. So it started with them, but as the game evolved, it became a lot more grown. So this is a game for adults, but we do have 2 levels of difficulty in there. So there are 300 question cards that are pretty tough. And then there's 100 question cards that are for younger or less confident players so that everybody can really join in with it.
Got it. And when it comes to, your background creating games, have you created a game before?
I have. I actually created one with my 2 boys. And this was a much smaller thing. And in a sense, one of the reasons why I did it was as a test drive for Kickstarter to get a feel as to how to make a game and how to get it out. But I made a game with them that was called Sweetie Trumps. And it was a fun little card game where I worked with them to make the game, design the game, write the game. And then we sold it on Kickstarter. made about £4,000 and donated the money to food bank in the area of London where we lived. So it wasn't a commercial venture, our first game. It was very much something that I was doing with them. But League of the Lexicon, I approached completely differently. League of the Lexicon was a very serious project, and making a new game, trying to make it successful on Kickstarter. I mean, there's a lot of people that have put a lot of effort in, and it doesn't quite happen.
Yeah, you've literally 100x'd how much you raised, which is incredible.
Honestly, it is so gone beyond anything that I ever hoped. It's a slightly surreal experience looking at it. I mean, it's now approaching £350,000, which kind of blows my mind. And I'm not going to pretend for a second, well, that was our plan all along.
Yeah.
There is a hefty dose of luck involved with these things, but there is also a hefty dose, honestly, of making your luck as well. And we did get a few very important bits in place, I think.
So I'd love to get into that in just a little bit. But one other question I had for you is, what were you doing before you started making games and started putting out your work in this way?
Well, I ran a design agency for 12 years. So design is very much a big thing for me.
When you're designing, are you designing other people's board games or like physical products or like web-based stuff?
The design agency, I mean, it's different but similar. We actually specialized in charities and ethical organizations. So it was a design agency that was founded in a sense of kind of like integrity and trying to do the right thing. The output of our work was very different, but the focus on design, the desire to create something really original and beautiful and effective and impactful, that is absolutely something that's kind of informed how I've approached League of the Lexicon.
Got it. And when you were deciding then to kind of get more into the game space, what did people like around you say? Like, is this something that you were talking with people about and they were giving advice, or what were other people in your life talking about or saying when you decided to kind of make this I guess, shift, right, in your career here?
I think that you get a lot of looks from friends that are kind of like, oh, isn't that nice? Yeah, that's not going to happen. I think that rather kind of like, yeah, you indulge them as they go on their next ridiculous project. But I don't think anybody, even my wife, but actually that's not true. She has absolutely backed me on this and has absolutely believed in it. And the people that I've been playtesting it with and who have been on the journey have also been excited about it. So I think I'm probably have been quite coy about telling people about this thing because I kind of wanted the results to speak for themselves and also just not create something that would be a hostage to fortune.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think I only told my parents about it after it was way down the road. And I was like, oh, by the way, I've made a game.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's actually a good way to play it, right? In that you are really staying your eye on the ball and you're very focused about it. And then once you start to see success, then you can kind of introduce it. So that's a really smart move, I think, on your part.
I consider it more self-preservation.
How long were you working on the project before it really saw its moment, its spotlight here, getting on the actual Kickstarter platform?
There has been an insane amount of work that has gone into it. The copywriting for the quiz questions has been a huge undertaking. And we've had a team of people working on that. And because we were always determined that this wasn't just going to be like a bog standard quiz game where you're just like, what's the such and such of this? And then the answer is that. Our questions and answers are really deeply researched. So the idea was that, I mean, the questions are challenging, but when you read the answers, they're really rich and informative. And it's just like, that's really interesting. And so all of that takes a lot of time. And I've been quite a demanding editor as well. So even though the game features 2,000 questions, I would say I've probably binned about 500 questions that I was just like, don't like that. That's not going to work.
So you were doing lots of iteration, doing play testing. How long do you think you were working on this? Like a year, 2 years, a couple of months? What do you think?
I think soup to nuts, 18 months, I think. I would need to...
That's solid.
Yeah, but that's not solid.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's solid. That's a good investment of time, right?
Oh,
I mean,
no, absolutely.
You got to be serious about something. You got to be focused on something to really be working on it for that long, for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that I was passionate about it, and I believed that there was a space for this game, and that there was a world of people who would really connect with what the game was about. I don't think I ever imagined that world would be quite as large as it's proven to be, but I felt that there was something there that merited this commitment of time, effort, and resources.
Well, I think it really shows. I mean, you got some beautiful artwork on your campaign page for sure. So you talk about your first campaign, right? And you were saying how that was kind of more like for fun and like testing the waters. What are some of the different things that you did for this second campaign going into it? Do you have any thoughts or any kind of tips to impart on that?
Yes, I mean, they're chalk and cheese. I wouldn't compare the first campaign with this. They were their purpose, their nature, their product. It's completely different. I think that my philosophy was making a game is a crazy high risk thing to do. And the odds are so stacked against you in countless ways for an independent publisher to make something that's going to work. And to mitigate against that, I felt that everything had to be perfect.
Yeah.
The artwork had to be absolutely perfect. The design of the packaging and the materials that we used had to be the copywriting, the research. Everything had to really push the boat out to absolutely nail it. And I think that was kind of part of how I approached this.
So investing in your marketing, your assets that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like if we're going to do marketing, it needs to be the best. Our video, which wasn't actually an expensive video to make, but we shot it in the library of a kind of like an old school gentleman's club in London. It's like the most beautiful library in London. And so every bit I was determined, okay, there are no corners to be cut here. We just need to nail every aspect of it.
Yeah.
And I hope that doesn't sound like a glib thing to say, because I think that so many people that are making games would say they are doing exactly that. But that was certainly how I tried to approach it.
Got it. So focus on your marketing, invest in your marketing, really try to get something great, right? And really high quality. The other thing that was really interesting that I know you said in our pre-interview was that you don't always have to follow received wisdom. I was kind of curious what you meant by that.
If you ask somebody about setting up a Kickstarter page, one of the first things they will ask you if it's a game is, do you have reviewers? Do you have game reviews? Do you have video reviews? You've got to have video reviews. We have no reviews, like 0 reviews. I just didn't pursue it. And that certainly flew in the face of the wisdom of what people were telling me. What we did have, however, was, and this is kind of baked into the game as well. So we have these quiz questions. And about a year ago, we started contacting linguists and lexicographers around the world, people that had published books, edited dictionaries, were professors at universities, kind of like the real deal smart people. And we just invited them to contribute a question to the game. And people got really excited about it. And I think that we must have about like 50, 60, 70 contributors to the game. And they did more than just contribute a question to the game. They became part of the community that was really rooting for it to win as well. And they kind of became part of our influencer community as well. So what we didn't have in terms of traditional board game reviews, we kind of made up for by identifying that we were dealing with a slightly different audience. And it wasn't necessarily the board game playing audience. It was the word-loving audience. And the word-loving audience wasn't necessarily watching the video review shows. They were playing Wordle. They were following Susie Dent online. They were reading the wordy books. And so we just had a different targeting strategy, which was at odds with how people would normally approach board game marketing, tabletop game marketing.
Yeah.
And it was just something that we felt, okay, we think this can work. And because we had a very focused product and a very focused proposition, and it was something that was quite different from a lot of other games out there, we thought actually there's a different way to approach the marketing for that.
I think that takes a huge amount of courage as well to kind of go in the face of what other people are saying and really look internally and be like, okay, is this going to work for my product, right? Is this going to work for my strategy? Yeah. But that really paid off for you, it seems like.
We did work really hard at pushing that. And I mean, that was actually, so one thing we haven't mentioned is the 2 expansion packs. And the expansion packs have 100 cards each, and they are being written, the questions are being written by kind of world-leading lexicographers. So we have a slang expansion pack that is being written by a guy called Jonathan Green, who is like one of the most authoritative people about slang in the world. The global expansion pack is being written by somebody called Gaston Doran, who has had 2 books published about languages around the world and is kind of like an amazingly prolific and talented writer. And these things have really baked in the credentials and the authenticity and the passion of the game and made it resonate with word lovers.
Yeah, so it kind of elevated it, added more credibility, right?
Absolutely.
Added some social proof, those different elements.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, just to kind of talk on more of the story side. So, I mean, you've been working on this for a long time and you've been preparing for this. And obviously your boys are also looking at this. What were you feeling the night before you went live after doing all this prep work and now you're about to go live the next day? What were you feeling?
Really, really simple. I hope we don't embarrass ourselves. It was really simple. It's just like, okay, look, I want, if we make £30,000 out of this, if we hit 30,000, I'll be disappointed, but our dignity will be slightly intact.
Yeah.
So I just didn't want to embarrass myself.
And did you have an audience of some kind? Like, did you have a pre-launch audience at all, or were you just kind of launching this cold?
No, we had a pre-launch audience. We had built up a pretty good database. We had been pumping out content on Facebook and Instagram that was all about words. And so there was a community of people that were just liking the content that we were putting out. We invested a modest amount of money in pre-launch social media marketing to get our Kickstarter sign-up numbers up higher. I think that before we started working with the agency, we had about 400 people that had plugged in their details to Kickstarter. About 3 weeks later, we were at about 650 people. So we kind of tried to get ourselves into a good position there. And to be honest, I did what I think a lot of game makers do, which is I just was trying to draw as many lessons as possible from what other people who have been there and done that had done.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you should have the handcuffs on and think, well, that's the only way to do it. But I didn't want to make any rookie mistakes. So
you've done your homework. Yeah.
We'd done our homework. And we also had, and this kind of goes back to the contributors to the game, we had a lot of people who had given questions to the game that had 3, 4, 5,000 followers on Twitter, who I had engaged with the game pre-launch to say, okay, the game is launching at this point. It would be amazing if you could kind of spread the word on Twitter. So we had a really good social media blast, not just from ourselves, but from our extended community when the game went live. So it funded in 5 hours, which I was thrilled by. And it got that momentum, which is certainly something that pretty much everybody would say is critical to that success.
The way you feel about it now, I mean, first of all, you've grown a ton, obviously, throughout the campaign. And even from the early days, like, this is phenomenal. Like, this is runaway success for sure. How do you feel about this now? Do you feel a sense of gratitude? Do you feel excited? Like, how do you feel about the campaign right now, seeing the numbers right now?
Honestly, I feel a mixture of absolutely kind of like over the moon to see it do so well and connect with the audience that I felt was there. I kind of felt like my gut instinct that there was a customer base that would love this. I kind of feel like that was vindicated. And yeah, you know what? There is a real market because there are word lovers out there, and this is a game for word lovers, and boom. So I feel kind of like obviously thrilled by it. Honestly, I probably feel terrified as well. When you've got 5,000 people backing the game, or whatever the number is, that's 5,000 people that you need to deliver to. That's 5,000 little bits of logistical jigsaw to get right. And just as I've approached every aspect of the design and creation with the intent of making it kind of perfect, I want to make sure that fulfillment and the support and the relationship that we develop is also perfect. But there's a lot of moving parts there, and people move from being super excited to irritated very quickly if something doesn't quite go perfectly. And even when those things aren't in your hand, people aren't always massively generous with you. So I'm aware that with a successful campaign comes the requirement to deliver successfully as well.
Yeah.
And I know that the product is there. But there are all of these moving parts around shipping and fulfillment, which is daunting for anybody. And I just want to make sure we don't screw it up and we just get it into people's hands for Christmas, which is what we promised throughout the campaign.
Yeah, especially when you got 5,000 people around the world. That's a nice problem to have, but it is a problem as well, right? Something to solve.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the other questions I had for you is, you kind of came into this having done one other project, and you came from this design background. Now it's almost like you're a board game or a card game creator, right? Do you feel like you've been kind of realized that this is a new thing you can do? Have you ever considered, like, maybe I should have done this earlier? What are your thoughts on that?
My career path is quite a weird one. And if you had told me 5 years ago, you know what, I think you're going to make a really big board game on Kickstarter, I would have just been like, I think that's hugely unlikely. I can't see that happening. But then 5 years ago, I photographed every laundrette in London. And that got turned into a photo book that was then being sold called Laundorama, that did really well. And if you had told me 5 years before that, I think you're going to photograph every laundrette in London and make a book out of it, I would have said, I think that's really unlikely. And I suppose what I'm saying is that I think that my life has been full of really unlikely stuff happening. And that's kind of okay. That's quite how I like it.
Yeah, let me ask a follow-up question on that, actually, which is, it sounds like what's been sort of the underlying key to this, I don't know if you want to call it like randomness or serendipity or new directions. It sounds like a lot of that is actually based in your creativity.
Yeah, you know what? That is it. What I am is a maker. I like making stuff. I really like making stuff. And if I look back through all of the things I've done over my working life, I've done a lot of making. I mean, I've made books. I made this photo book. I've sold the stuff that's too weird for me to even tell you on this podcast, but I love making stuff. But League of the Lexicon is a bit different because I can see how it can evolve and grow. And I think that this one is a keeper. Mm-hmm. And this one is something that I'm going to be putting a lot of love and care into, because I think that we have the game, we have the 2 expansion packs, but I see more. And I can see how this will evolve from a cute game into a bigger idea that will really has got some legs to it.
So one kind of takeaway, just kind of listening to you there, would be for the listeners as well. Maybe if you do have a history of being creative and you always are thinking ideas, maybe don't suppress that. Like really just kind of go with that and see where it goes for a little bit, because you never know what idea you can come up with next. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I would say that's absolutely fair. I think that my approach to this was, again, not meaning to sound glib, but one step at a time. You cannot say, okay, you know what, I'm going to jack it all in and make board games. That's what I'm now going to dedicate my life to. I kind of took baby steps with this, and from kind of like initial prototypes that I was making myself, I only committed to any kind of expenditure on design or kind of anything, any aspect of expenditure, when I felt, okay, yeah, I think this warrants a small punt to take it to the next level. And then I would take it to the next level and we'd be playtesting, just like, okay, I think that this warrants a bit more. So each time it unlocked a bit more commitment and a bit more resources and a bit more time from me to make it happen. So absolutely, if you are a creating kind of a person, then this thing is, whatever this thing is, it's for the making. But I think one would be a fool to say, yeah, you know what, this is going to make my fortune. I'm just going to put everything into this without properly knowing that it does have what it takes.
Yeah, so take it kind of step by step, bite size. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't think too far ahead necessarily, and just kind of go with where you are, sounds like.
I mean, the other thing that I'm quite conscious of with this, which I think is kind of part of why the game is as it is, and perhaps why it's doing quite well, I'm not massively into board games. And actually, a lot of board games leave me quite bored and exhausted. I don't really like how they look. And I don't really, I mean, if I open up a game and there's like a 30-page rule book in there, I'm just like,
so boring.
I don't have time for this. So part of how I approached League of the Lexicon was as somebody who is not of the board game world. I didn't want artwork that looked like board game artwork. I did not want long rules. I wanted rules that you could write on a postcard. And I wanted to do things differently from how board games are done. And I think that's personal to me, but I think it has possibly been helpful in terms of how the game looks and feels and is composed, made up.
Yeah, it has a very distinct feel for it, for sure. So we're coming to the end of the interview here. So I got 2 more questions for you. But the first one is, where can people go to learn more about League of the Lexicon? Where can they go and learn more about that?
Leagueoflexicon.com or twobrothersgames.co.uk. Either one takes you to the same place. I don't know when this podcast goes out. It might well be that our campaign's dead by then. Well, over by then. But obviously you can check it out on Kickstarter. But the first port of call, leagueoflexicon.com.
Okay, and my final question for you is, and you can speak directly to the listeners and we can end on this note, is you can end with a final tip or thing that you wish you knew. You could end with a inspirational quote. You could end with just some kind of word of encouragement to other creators out there. Anything along those lines. And we can end on that note.
What would I end on? God, you could have warned me that this was going to come up. You could have pulled some. Okay, so I think I've got 2 things that I would say. Firstly, we tried to make a game that had real integrity behind it. So for instance, the environmental credentials of the game are very high. We've been really exacting there. We use FSC paper stock. We've removed as much plastic as we can from it, and we've made a big deal about it. And it has hit us in our bottom line. It's made it a more expensive game for us to make and therefore a less profitable one. But that integrity and that commitment, I think, has resonated with a lot of people who have supported the game. And so I think that alongside all of the marketing that you do about how kind of like exciting and this and that, I think that having that heart and that conviction, that integrity, I think is a good thing. And the last thing, which I suppose is linked to that, is just be honest and transparent and upfront with people. Don't BS them. If there is an issue with something, if you've made a mistake with something, if something is kind of not quite perfect, instead of trying to be clever and smarmy about it, own your mistakes, be human and be real and be yourself. Because I think, again, people respond to that and the opposite really irritates them.
Love it. Very well said. Thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing some of your great insights and tips, and look forward to your fulfillment and also if you're doing another campaign in the future.
Thank you so much. It's been great talking.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified Podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. I hope you've learned a lot on today's show when it comes to creativity, when it comes to coming out with a new product, when it comes to getting funding, the things you need to invest in order to really set yourself up for success, as well as what you got to do every step of the way. I think the biggest takeaway that I've had, at least from today's episode, is that when you're a creative person, and creativity can take many different forms. If you have an idea, you come up with a solution to a problem, I think that's hella creative. If you have a creative, sometimes you just got to let your mind run free. Let your mind run free with this project idea and just keeps taking steps. Put one step in front of the other. And the more that you can do that, my friends, the more that you're going to start to have success show up in your life. Now, when it comes to this, obviously I love to do the podcast. I also got a YouTube channel and I have books out there, the Kickstarter Launch Formula. I got 10 other books as well. I also have my blog, crowdcrush.com. So I put out a lot of information and training. However, a lot of people over the years have said at the same time, Sal, this is great, but I'd really like something that's a little bit more specific, a little bit more tactical. I'd like case studies. I would like templates, plug and play when it comes to email sequences, when it comes to using landing pages, really wanting to have strategies that work today and that I know are going to get results, tactics to triple your funding, etc. So I've really responded to that, and I've put a lot of that information into my private training, which is almost like you think of doing a launch, but it's like doing a launch on steroids. So you get access to tons of my templates, paint by numbers formulas, worksheets, checklists, the works, as well as case studies in terms of what actually works to get funding. So first of all, I'm going to share with you a link that kind of goes into that a little bit more. We've had tons of people go through this training and raise tons when it comes to this. I've had many people who have had great results. I have some examples here, which I'll share with you in this link. But one of the other things I feel like I also need to mention is that when it comes to this as well, it's not just getting access to the right information. It's not just necessarily having access to the right data. You can have access to all of that, but still, you can not get a six-pack or you can have difficulty at the gym. So you do have to prepare and you have to invest yourself and you have to make sure that you're taking steps forward and to be learning from, sources that are designed to help you. At the same time, it helps you so much when you have a guide, when you have a mentor, when you have someone who's helping you every step of the way. And that way you're not just going there and you have your diet plan and you got your going to the gym and you're pumping some iron. You also have a coach there who's designed to get you results even faster. And I think back in my own life to the times when I had coaches, whether that's when I was doing fencing, I actually did fencing for about 10 years, the sports, more, tennis, or being able to play different, sports like that, being able to do soccer or baseball, run track. Every time that I had a coach, someone there who was helping me, holding my hand, allowing me to ask questions, really going in depth for my specific case, I was so much more successful and so much faster it was that I actually saw results show up in my life. So I think that's also really important. So that's why actually in today's offering, I'm also including mentorship in this new package I'm calling my Kickstarter Mentor Package. So if you want to book a call with me and also get access to, like I said, all of the resources which I mentioned, I'm going to include a link right now, and you can go and you can scroll down. And if you sign up for the Kickstarter Mentor Package, you can book a call with me, you get access to me, and you also get access to all of these war chest of information, which is designed to help you move the needle faster and designed to be effective and proven to get you results. So I hope you check this out. Again, the link is at crowdcrux.com/VIP. That link is crowdcrux.com/VIP, crowdcrux.com/VIP. You can go there, you can learn a little bit more about this. And again, this is really for people that want to set their project up for success. They also want hand-holding, right? They want intensive coaching sessions with me. They want check-ins. They want access to all of the things that I mentioned where they're planning on doing this campaign themselves or maybe getting a little bit of help, but they really want something that's like plug and play, easy to use, literally, paint by numbers formula when it comes to doing a project. So again, that link is crowdcrux.com/VIP. Go there and you can learn more about this. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. Hope you go and check out some of the other episodes I got there in my archives. Also, leave me a positive rating and review if you have not yet, so that other people know that this show is worth their time. With that being said, take some action towards your goals. Really take some time to hustle this week. And regardless whether or not, I hope that someday you become a guest on this show, and also that we are talking about your particular success story. My name is Sal, and I will see you next time.